The sun was merciless over Camp Raven, its heat bouncing off the sand-colored concrete and baking every square inch of the sprawling military training ground. Sweat trickled down the brows of recruits as drill instructors barked orders like cannon fire. Somewhere in the back row of Alpha Squad, a young woman named Aria Kane tightened her fists until her knuckles whitened. She joined the elite combat training program against every warning, against every dismissive smirk. From the moment she stepped into the barracks, whispers followed her like vultures. She's too small. Too slow. Too weak for Marine-level combat. The worst came during weapons drills, when Staff Sergeant Hall let his voice carry loud enough for the whole squad to hear. Better stay behind the big boys, Kane. Wouldn't want you to break a nail. The other recruits laughed, especially the 5 who had made themselves her unofficial tormentors, Cole, Briggs, Torres, Macklin, and Reese. They were all seasoned tough guys, former brawlers or ex-athletes, and they loved nothing more than finding her in the chow hall or the obstacle course to throw an insult. Sometimes they accidentally knocked her tray over. Sometimes they'd trip her in the mud, then tell her she should learn how to fall like a soldier. She never snapped back. She just tightened her jaw, kept her eyes forward, and trained harder. Every night, when the barracks went dark, she stayed up doing push-ups until her arms shook and shadowboxing until her lungs burned. One sweltering afternoon, the platoon gathered for the Combat Simulation Gauntlet, a brutal, full-contact endurance test designed to push trainees to the brink. The instructors paired them off for sparring drills inside the steel cage at the center of the field. The Marines loved this day, it was the perfect excuse to prove dominance. Hall's voice boomed across the yard, Kane. You're up against Cole. The 5 tormentors erupted into grins. Cole stepped forward, rolling his shoulders, a predator about to play with its food. Aria stepped into the cage with measured calm, her braid brushing against her back. She'd been waiting for this moment for weeks, not for revenge, but for proof. Cole came in swinging hard, testing her guard with heavy jabs. She let him press her back, then slipped under his right cross and snapped an elbow into his ribs. The breath whooshed from him like air out of a punctured tire. He staggered, surprised, but came in again. This time she pivoted, hooked his leg, and sent him crashing to the mat with a thud that silenced the smirks outside the cage. Cole lay there, gasping, as Hall blew the whistle and called for the next opponent. Briggs came in, bigger and faster than Cole. He swung wide with a haymaker, she ducked, drove her fist into his jaw, and followed with a spinning back kick that caught him square in the chest. He stumbled into the cage wall, trying to catch himself, but she was already on him, grabbing his wrist and yanking it into a lock that made him howl in pain. Hall's eyes narrowed from the corner of the ring. The other 3 tormentors were watching now with clenched jaws, their earlier laughter evaporating. Torres charged next, confident his raw strength would overwhelm her. Aria met him head-on, absorbing the first shove, then twisting his momentum into a shoulder throw. He hit the mat with a grunt, only to find her boot planted just inches from his throat. No smile. No gloating. Just calm, controlled dominance. By the time Macklin entered, the cage felt smaller, heavier. He was the most aggressive of them all, a brawler with fast hands. They exchanged a flurry of blows, her arms moving like coiled steel, deflecting every strike until she saw the opening, a sharp knee to his midsection, followed by an uppercut that sent him sprawling backward. Only Reese remained, and now even the instructors were leaning forward. Reese was taller than her by a full foot, his arms thick as tree trunks. He came at her like a freight train, but she sidestepped at the last second, letting his momentum slam into the steel. He turned in rage, swinging wildly. She slipped inside his guard, landed 3 precise shots to his ribs, and then, without hesitation, spun into a roundhouse kick that connected flush with his temple. Reese crumpled like a sack of sand. The cage was silent. Hall's whistle finally cut through the air, sharp and short. That's enough. But everyone knew it wasn't just enough, it was domination. She hadn't just won. She'd erased the idea that she was weak. The 5 Marines who'd mocked her were now sprawled, groaning, on the mat. Aria walked out of the cage without a word, her head high, her breathing steady. Every eye followed her, and every whisper that trailed behind was different now. That night, while the others nursed their bruises, Aria was back in the gym, training alone. She wasn't done proving herself. This was just the beginning. 2 weeks had passed since the cage fight that left 5 Marines on the ground and 100 whispers in the air. Aria Kane's name had become something of a legend around Camp Raven. No one called her weak anymore, not out loud, at least. But respect in the Marines wasn't permanent. It was something you earned again every single day, and there were plenty of people waiting for her to trip, to prove that what she did in the cage was just luck. The instructors decided it was time to test her in a real scenario. They called it Operation Sandviper, a full-scale combat simulation that mimicked an urban war zone. It was brutal, exhausting, and designed to push soldiers to their mental and physical limits. The catch? This time, Aria wasn't just a participant, she was the squad leader. Her team included 3 fresh recruits, and 2 of the men she'd beaten in the cage, Briggs and Macklin. The assignment wasn't an accident. The instructors wanted to see if she could lead people who didn't respect her. The mission briefing was simple: infiltrate a fortified mock compound, eliminate hostile forces, secure the hostage, and extract without casualties. In reality, it was a nightmare. The enemy forces OPFOR were made up of advanced trainees who knew every trick in the book. They would be laying ambushes, setting traps, and hitting hard. The moment Aria's team stepped into the simulation zone, smoke grenades filled the street, cutting visibility to just a few feet. She moved first, hand up and a fist signal. Eyes sharp. Watch the rooftops. Briggs muttered something under his breath, but she ignored it. The first attack came fast. 2 OPFOR soldiers burst from a corner, firing paint rounds that left stinging welts on contact. Macklin froze for a split second. Aria didn't. She rolled forward, sweeping the first soldier's legs out from under him, then pivoted and slammed her elbow into the second's chest plate. They both went down before the rest of her team could even raise their rifles. She looked back at Macklin. If you freeze again, you're out. Understand? Macklin just nodded, jaw tight. The deeper they went, the worse it got. Sniper fire cracked from somewhere above. The rounds weren't lethal, but they'd disqualify you instantly if they hit. The others dove for cover behind a burnt-out vehicle, but Aria's eyes scanned the rooftops. She spotted the faint glint of a scope. "Cover me," she ordered. Then she broke into a sprint, darting between debris and ducking behind walls until she reached the building. Without hesitation, she climbed a half-collapsed fire escape, kicked in the rooftop door, and caught the sniper by surprise. 10 seconds later, the shots stopped. She reappeared, tossing the captured rifle to Briggs. "Next time, don't wait for me to do your job." When they reached the enemy compound, they were met with silence. It was too quiet. She motioned for the team to fan out, and then the attack came. 4 armored opponents burst from the shadows. Her blood went cold when she recognized them: Cole, Torres, Reese, and a hulking recruit from Delta Squad known only as Bear. This was a setup. The instructors had stacked the deck against her. Cole came first, fists swinging like hammers. She sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to hurl him into a wall. Torres tried to sweep her legs. She leapt over his attack, twisted midair, and drove her heel into his jaw. Reese charged from behind, but she ducked, hooked his arm, and flipped him clean over her shoulder. Bear roared, charging like a bull. His size made him dangerous, but also slow. She pivoted, driving a palm strike into his ribs, then kicked his knee hard enough to drop him. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Briggs and Macklin, now seeing her in full control, moved to secure the hostage while she kept watch. When the extraction whistle finally blew, the mission was a flawless success. No casualties. All objectives complete. As they returned to base, Staff Sergeant Hall was waiting. His arms were folded, his expression unreadable. He stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "Kane, you've got what it takes." No sarcasm. No mocking tone. Just truth. That night, as the rest of the squad celebrated in the mess hall, Aria was back in the gym alone, training. For her, it wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about never becoming the person they once thought she was. And if you're watching this, remember this: when they doubt you, don't argue. Train. Work. Outlast them.